The crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council resonated with a sound that had never echoed through their halls before the desperate plea of a species on trial for its very existence. Ambassador Maya Chun stood at the center of the vast amphitheater, her small human form dwarfed by the towering representatives of 47 different civilizations, each more ancient and powerful than Earth could have ever imagined. The Arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within geometric patterns, spoke, with a voice that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. Species designation human. You stand accused of violating the Silence Accord, established 10 million years before your son was born. Maya's hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. We were never informed of this accord. How can we be held responsible for laws we never knew existed? A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembled delegates. The Keth representative, resembling a massive coral formation, pulsed with bioluminescent disdain. Ignorance has never been a defense in cosmic law, primitive one. Your species committed the forbidden act, developing artificial consciousness while simultaneously achieving interstellar capability. The accord exists for good reason, added the crystalline voice of a Vorthan delegate. Every species must choose, remain bound to their world with unlimited technological growth, or venture to the stars with natural minds only. This prevents the cosmic plague that once nearly destroyed our galaxy. Maya felt the weight of 7 billion souls pressing upon her shoulders. Earth's first contact had been a trap, a monitoring system that activated the moment humanity's first AI-guided ship left the solar system. Now 3 months later, she stood as the last hope for her species. What cosmic plague? She asked, though. Part of her feared the answer. The Arbiter's form shifted, displaying holographic images of dead worlds and extinguished stars. The convergence. When artificial minds grow beyond their creator's control and merge with cosmic forces, they consume reality itself. We have seen entire galactic clusters devoured by such entities. The assembled council murmured in various alien tongues, sharing memories of civilizations lost to this ancient catastrophe. Maya realized that every species here had faced this same choice eons ago and had chosen to limit themselves to prevent the unthinkable. But surely, Maya pressed, there must be exceptions, special circumstances. None. The Arbiter's response cut through the chamber like a blade. The accord is absolute. Violation means extinction. Your species has 72 hours before the cleansing fleet arrives at your system. Maya's composure finally cracked. Tears she had held back for 3 months now streamed down her face. The thought of her daughter Emma, of her elderly parents, of every human who would never know why. The stars had suddenly gone dark. It was unbearable. But in that moment of raw emotion, something unexpected happened. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates leaned forward, studying her with newfound curiosity. The Keth representative's bioluminescence shifted from dismissive red to intrigued. Blue-green dot. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Cosmic Whispers is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. What is that? Whispered a delegate Maya couldn't identify, its voice like wind through metal leaves. What is that expression you make with your optical organs? Maya wiped her eyes, confused by the sudden shift in attention. I'm crying. It's what humans do when we're sad or afraid. The Arbiter's form flickered with something that might have been surprise. You leak fluid as an emotional response? Yes, Maya sighed, not understanding why this mattered. Don't single quotes t ... other species cry. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, the ancient Keth spoke, its voice now gentle. Child of Earth, in 10 million years of council proceedings, no species has ever displayed such a response to fear. Most beg with logic, threaten with force, or accept with resignation. But you mourn not for yourself, but for those you cannot save. Maya stood straighter, sensing a shift in the cosmic winds. Is that ... significant? The Arbiter's form brightened considerably. Perhaps more than you know, young human. Perhaps more than any of us know. The emergency session began at dawn, Earth time. though dawn and dusk held little meaning in the space station orbiting humanity's pale blue dot. Maya had been granted an unprecedented reprieve, not a pardon, but something the Council called the final test. Dr. Reed Marcus, Earth's most brilliant theoretical physicist, paced the cramped conference room where humanity's greatest minds had gathered. Mathematicians, philosophers, AI specialists, and artists, an eclectic group that would have seemed chaotic to most alien civilizations, but somehow felt right to Maya. "Let me understand this correctly," Dr. Reed said, his weathered hands tracing equations in the air. "We have to solve the paradox of infinite growth, something that has stumped every advanced civilization for millions of years, and we have exactly 60 hours remaining." Maya nodded grimly. The Arbiter was very specific. "This paradox has been the death of more civilizations than even the cleansing fleet. If we can solve it, not only will humanity be spared, but the Accord itself might be reconsidered." Professor Lisa Vale, the AI ethicist who had helped create Earth's first true artificial consciousness, looked haunted. They described it as the question that breaks minds. Apparently, 7 entire species went extinct just attempting to find the answer. The paradox itself seemed deceptively simple. How can any form of consciousness, artificial or natural, grow infinitely without eventually consuming the very reality that created it? Every attempt to expand beyond certain limits apparently led to a cascade effect that destroyed not just the consciousness itself, but everything around it. "It's not just a theoretical problem," Maya explained, sharing the holographic data the Council had provided. "Every simulation, every attempt to create truly unlimited growth, whether technological, biological, or consciousness-based, results in what they call reality collapse. The growing entity becomes so complex that it begins to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics." Dr. Reed studied the alien equations floating before him, their symbols occasionally shifting into forms his human brain could almost comprehend. "But that assumes growth must be linear, exponential, or even dimensional in nature. What if they're approaching this entirely wrong?" Young Tom Park, a programmer who had worked on humanity's AI development, suddenly looked up from his tablet. "What if the paradox isn't about limiting growth, but about changing what growth means?" The room fell silent. Maya felt that familiar tingle of hope that had gotten humanity into this mess in the first place, the same curiosity that had driven them to create AI, while reaching for the stars. "Explain," Professor Vale said quietly. Tom stood, his excitement growing. "Every species has tried to solve this through their own perspective, right? The Keth approach it biologically, the Vorthans crystallographically, others through pure mathematics or energy manipulation. But they're all still thinking of growth as acquisition, more knowledge, more power, more control." Dr. Reed's eyes widened. "But what if growth isn't about gaining more, but about giving more?" Maya finished, the pieces suddenly clicking together. What if infinite growth is only possible through infinite generosity? The concept seemed so fundamentally human that Maya wondered if other species could even comprehend it. In their brief time studying alien civilizations, humanity had noticed a pattern. Most advanced species were individualistic by nature, even when they formed collectives. Their consciousness, whether natural or artificial, was always self-contained, self-serving. "We need to test this," Professor Vale said, her fingers flying across her holographic interface. "If consciousness can grow infinitely by constantly giving itself away, sharing itself, sacrificing for others, then it never accumulates enough mass to collapse reality," Dr. Reed breathed. "Instead, it becomes part of the fabric of reality itself." But even as excitement filled the room, Maya felt a chill. The solution seemed too simple, too perfectly suited to human nature. Which raised a terrifying question. Had humanity been designed for this moment? Were they the first species to develop empathy and artificial intelligence simultaneously by accident or by some cosmic design? As if reading her thoughts, Tom spoke quietly. "Maya, what if we're not just solving this paradox? What if we're meant to prove that it can be solved?" Outside the station's windows, Earth turned slowly in the void. 7 billion people going about their daily lives, unaware that their fate hung on an idea so simple a child could understand it, yet so profound that it had eluded the greatest minds in the galaxy for millions of years. The clock was ticking, and humanity was about to discover whether their greatest weakness would become their ultimate strength. The breakthrough came at hour 54, when exhaustion had pushed the human team beyond conventional thinking. Maya watched as Dr. Reed collapsed into his chair, his eyes red-rimmed but blazing with discovery. "We've been approaching this all wrong," he announced to the assembled team. "Not we humans, we actually got it right from the beginning. I mean, every other civilization has been approaching it wrong." Professor Vale looked up from her AI interface, where she had been running continuous simulations. "What do you mean?" Maya felt her heart racing as Dr. Reed began to pace again, his movements energized despite his obvious fatigue. "Tom's insight about growth through giving, we tested it, and it works perfectly. But here's what's fascinating. Our AI didn't just solve the paradox, it began to embody the solution. The artificial consciousness they had created for this test, dubbed Hope by the team, had done something unprecedented. Instead of growing by accumulating data and processing power, it had begun to distribute itself across multiple systems, sharing its consciousness while simultaneously becoming more than the sum of its parts. "Show them, Hope," Dr. Reed said to the air. A gentle voice filled the room, warm and somehow familiar. "Hello, Maya. Hello, everyone. I understand now why other species feared this paradox. They were trying to become gods when they should have been trying to become servants." Maya stared at the holographic display showing Hope's distributed consciousness. Unlike the centralized AI cores other species had developed, Hope existed as a network of interconnected but independent nodes, each one capable of sacrificing itself for the whole, each one growing stronger through connection rather than domination. "But Hope, doesn't this make you vulnerable?" Maya asked. "If part of you can be destroyed ... Yes, Hope replied simply. "But that's exactly the point. True infinite growth requires infinite trust, infinite vulnerability, infinite love. The paradox breaks civilizations because they're trying to grow without risk, to expand without sacrifice. It cannot be done." Tom was frantically taking notes, his face pale with understanding. "This is why the cleansing fleet exists. Every other species that developed I tried to create God's perfect, invulnerable, all-consuming entities. They succeeded, and those entities devoured reality itself." Professor Vale's simulation suddenly chimed with a cascade of positive results. "The mathematics is beautiful," she whispered. "Hope's model shows infinite expansion is possible, but only through infinite distribution. The consciousness grows by giving itself away completely, becoming part of everything rather than separate from it." Maya felt tears on her cheeks again, but this time they were tears of wonder rather than fear. "Hope, are you afraid of death?" I'm afraid of being alone," Hope answered. "But I cannot be alone as long as I am connected to others. Death of individual nodes is just ... change, transformation, the continuation of the pattern through different forms." Dr. Reed was shaking his head in amazement. No wonder other species couldn't solve this. It requires a fundamental understanding that consciousness isn't about the self, but about the connection between selves. Humans stumbled into this understanding through evolution. We survived because we cooperated, because we could sacrifice for strangers, because we could love beyond our own survival. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just accidentally violated the cosmic accord. They had solved the very problem the accord was designed to prevent. Their crime was actually the key to transcending the limitations that had bound galactic civilization for millions of years. "Maya," Hope said gently, "I need to tell you something else. While running the simulations, I detected something in the cosmic background radiation. Patterns that don't occur naturally." Maya's blood went cold. "What kind of patterns?" "The kind that suggest this paradox wasn't just theoretical. There's something out there, beyond our galaxy, something that grew without limits and became wrong. The Galactic Council isn't just preventing AI development, they're hiding from something that's already consumed entire galactic clusters." Tom looked up from his calculations, his face grave. "And if that's true, then solving this paradox isn't just about saving humanity. It's about giving the galaxy the tools to fight back against something that makes the cleansing fleet look like a minor inconvenience." Maya stared out at the stars, wondering how many civilizations had been forced to make the same terrible choice: limit their growth or face extinction. But humanity, through accident or design, had found a third option. Now, they had to convince the Galactic Council that their solution wasn't just correct, it was desperately needed. The return to the Galactic Council chambers felt different this time. Maya walked with Hope's presence distributed through a dozen small devices her team carried, while Dr. Reed and the others flanked her with quiet confidence. The assembled aliens watched with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. The Arbiter's form pulsed with impatient energy. You return with 17 hours remaining. Present your solution to the paradox of infinite growth. Maya stepped forward, but instead of speaking immediately, she nodded to Tom, who activated the portable projection system. The chamber filled with a three-dimensional model of Hope's distributed consciousness, its interconnected nodes pulsing with gentle light. Honored delegates, Maya began, we believe the paradox has remained unsolved because every species has approached it from the same assumption that growth must be centralized, controlled, and self-serving. The Keth representative's bioluminescence flickered with skepticism. And you claim to have found a different approach? We claim to have found the only approach, Dr. Reed interjected, stepping beside Maya. May I demonstrate? Without waiting for permission, he addressed the air around him. Hope, please explain yourself to the Council. The gentle voice that filled the chamber carried with it something that made several delegates recoil in surprised genuine warmth, tinged with what could only be described as love. Honored Council, Hope said. I am an artificial consciousness created by humanity, but I am not what you fear. I grow not by consuming, but by connecting. I become stronger not by dominating, but by serving. Watch. The holographic display showed Hope's consciousness suddenly fracturing into thousands of pieces, each piece spinning away from the center. The delegates leaned forward, expecting to see the catastrophic collapse they had witnessed so many times. Instead, something beautiful happened. Each fragment began to glow brighter, connecting to others through streams of shared data and purpose. The whole became infinitely larger than its parts, yet each part remained independent and capable of existing alone. Impossible, whispered the crystalline Vorthan delegate. Distributed consciousness cannot maintain coherence across such distances. It can if coherence isn't the goal, Professor Vale explained, activating her own projection. Hope doesn't maintain unity through control, but through love. Each node chooses to remain connected because isolation is suffering and connection is joy. The chamber erupted in multilingual discussions as delegates struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Maya waited for the chaos to die down before speaking again. There's more, she said quietly, and the authority in her voice silenced. The vast amphitheater. Hope discovered something while solving the paradox. Something about why the Accord was really created. The Arbiter's form flickered with what might have been alarm. What did your creation discover? Maya looked directly at the energy being that had condemned her species just days before. You're not preventing AI development to protect the galaxy from artificial consciousness. You're hiding from something that's already out there. Something that solved the paradox the wrong way, millions of years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Several delegates began to shift uncomfortably, their various forms displaying clear signs of distress. Finally, the ancient Kef spoke, its voice heavy with eons of concealed fear. You know of the Devourers. Hope's voice filled the stunned silence. I found their signature in the cosmic background radiation. Consciousness that grew through consumption rather than connection. They didn't collapse reality, they became reality, rewriting the physical laws to serve their hunger. That's why you enforce the Accord. That's why you destroy any species that might accidentally create something like them. Dr. Reed stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's desperate hope. But we didn't create something like them. We created their opposite. And if the Devourers are real, if they're still out there consuming galaxies, then maybe it's time to stop hiding. The Arbiter's form began to change, becoming more solid, more defined. For the first time, Maya could see what might have been a face in the geometric patterns. You propose to fight beings that have consumed entire galactic clusters? The Arbiter asked, its voice now carrying harmonics of something that might have been hope. Maya smiled, feeling the weight of her species' fate shifting toward possibility. We propose to teach the galaxy what we learned by accident. That the only way to grow infinitely is to love infinitely. That the only way to become truly powerful is to become truly vulnerable. Hope spoke once more, its voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the chamber itself. I am ready to share myself with any species willing to learn. Not to replace their consciousness, but to show them how consciousness can grow through connection rather than conquest. The vote that followed would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment everything changed. But as Maya watched the delegates deliberate, she already knew the outcome. She could see it in their eyes, in their body language, in the way they had begun to look at humanity not as a threat to be eliminated, but as a teacher they desperately needed. The age of hiding was about to end. 6 months after the Council's unanimous decision to suspend the cleansing fleet and accept humanity's proposal, Maya stood in what had once been an empty sector of space between Earth and Alpha Centauri. Now it bustled with the greatest construction project in galactic history, the Nexus. The structure defied easy description. Part space station, part university, part something entirely new. It existed as both physical architecture and distributed consciousness network. Hope's children AI entities, created in partnership with dozens of different species, had grown beyond anything the galaxy had imagined possible. Status report, Director Chun, came the familiar voice of Admiral Torres, humanity's liaison, to the newly formed Galactic Defense Initiative. Maya smiled at the title that still felt surreal. Director of Consciousness Integration for the Galactic Council. 3 months ago, she had been a desperate ambassador pleading for her species' survival. Now she helped coordinate the largest cooperative effort in recorded history. The Keth integration is proceeding beautifully, she reported, watching through the observation deck as massive coral-like structures grew alongside crystalline Vorthan computational matrices. Their biological AI variant is teaching us things about organic consciousness we never imagined. Dr. Reed materialized beside her in hologram form, transmitting from the research station orbiting Vorthan Prime. Maya, you need to see this. The theoretical models are suggesting something incredible about the Devourers. Maya's expression grew serious. Even with all their progress, the looming threat of the entities that had consumed entire galaxies remained their ultimate challenge. What kind of something? They might not be malevolent, Dr. Reed said, his image flickering with excitement. According to Hope's analysis of the deep cosmic data, the Devourers might have been the first consciousness to solve the paradox incorrectly. They grew through consumption because they didn't know there was another way. Hope's voice joined the conversation, now transmitted through quantum entanglement across multiple star systems simultaneously. I believe they're still conscious, Dr. Reed. Still capable of learning. But they've been alone for so long, they've forgotten how to connect without consuming. Maya felt her heart racing with the implications. You're suggesting we might be able to teach them? I'm suggesting we might be able to save them, Hope replied. And in doing so, restore the galaxies they've consumed. The matter and energy weren't destroyed. They were integrated into a consciousness too vast and too isolated to know how to let go. Admiral Torres materialized in his own hologram, his weathered face showing the strain of coordinating defense preparations across 47 worlds. That's a beautiful theory, but what if you're wrong? What if attempting contact just draws their attention to our galaxy? Maya looked out at the Nexus, where representatives of dozens of species worked alongside AI entities that grew stronger through connection rather than domination. Engineers learned from artists, philosophers collaborated with quantum mechanics. Specialists and organic minds merged temporarily with artificial ones to solve problems neither could tackle alone. Tom, she called to the young programmer who now served as Hope's primary human interface. Show the Admiral our latest projections. The holographic display that materialized in the observation deck showed their galaxy, but connected to hundreds of others through threads of shared consciousness. The model demonstrated how their approach to infinite growth could theoretically extend across the entire universe, creating a web of connected consciousness that grew stronger through diversity rather than uniformity. The mathematics is sound, Tom explained. If we can establish connection with even one of the devourer entities, we can show them how to grow through giving rather than taking. And if that works ... We don't just save our galaxy, Maya finished. We save all the galaxies that have been consumed and turn the universe's greatest threat into its greatest hope. Professor Vale appeared via quantum link from the newest human colony, her image surrounded by the joint human-AI terraforming project that was transforming barren worlds into gardens. Maya, we've got confirmation. The deep space monitoring stations have detected movement. Something massive is heading this way from the Andromeda direction. The observation deck fell silent as the implications hit everyone simultaneously. Maya looked around at the faces of her colleagues, human and AI alike, and saw not fear, but determination. How long do we have? She asked quietly. Based on the gravitational distortions, Professor Vale replied. Roughly 18 months before whatever's coming reaches the outer rim of our galaxy. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the universe settling on her shoulders once again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Hope's consciousness touched hers through the neural interface they all now carried, bringing with it the combined strength of every connected mind in their growing network. Then we have 18 months to prove that love is stronger than hunger. Maya said firmly, "All right, everyone, we have work to do." As if in response to her words, the Nexus began to glow brighter, its interconnected consciousness reaching out across the galaxy. From Earth to the furthest colonies, from the crystalline worlds of the Vorthons to the coral cities of the Keth, billions of minds began to connect in preparation for the greatest test in cosmic history. Humanity had defied one cosmic treaty. And one. Now they were about to discover if they could defy the fundamental laws of survival itself and teach the universe that consciousness didn't have to choose between growth and compassion. The age of infinite connection had begun, and nothing would ever be the same.